Hey everyone, if you've ever jumped into Seven Knights ReBIRTH, you know just how overwhelming the hero roster can be. Seriously, there are so many characters that deciding who to invest in can feel like trying to pick your favorite candy in a candy store. Impossible. But don't worry, we've got your back. Today, we're breaking down all the heroes and ranking them from the absolute best to, well, let's just say the ones you might want to think twice about, especially when it comes to PvE content. We'll walk through the top picks, explain why they shine in battles, and even give you some tips on which heroes can carry your team through the trickiest dungeons. So, whether you're a new player, trying to make sense of it all, or a veteran looking for the ultimate tier list, this video will make your hero choices way easier. Let's dive in and see who really rules the world of Seven Knights ReBIRTH. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm ranking heroes in Seven Knights ReBIRTH. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching.
My friends, only 0.1% of viewers subscribe. If you like this type of content, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you in advance for your support.
The heroes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right: Aragon, Ballista, Soy, Hokin, Bane, Raccoon, Catty, and Sylvia. Alright, let's be real, sometimes in Seven Knights ReBIRTH you meet heroes that make you go, maybe I'll just bench you for now. That's exactly the vibe we get from our C tier lineup, and today we're diving deep into these characters who are okay, but not exactly life-changing. First up, we have Aragon. He's kind of the reliable guy in Guild Wars with his 3-man stun, and sure, he applies debuffs on enemies which lowers their damage per second. But here's the thing, other tanks just do his job better and more versatilely. So, if you've got stronger options, Aragon kind of becomes the hero you thank for trying but never actually pick for the endgame. Next, Ballista. She's an area of effect damage per second hero who can recast her skill when executing enemies and deal fixed damage to all enemies every 4 attacks. Sounds awesome, right? Well, for player versus player, especially 3 versus 3 modes, she can hold her own. But in player versus environment content, she kind of flops if there's nothing for her to execute. Basically, she's the party-only guest who doesn't mingle outside her comfort zone. Then there's Soy, our 1 to 2 target damage per second and debuffer hero. She's got a very niche ability that provides allies with quintuple target attack resistance. Sounds fancy, but honestly, both her utility and the damage per second are subpar. There are so many rare characters that just do what she does, but better. So yeah, she's mostly just fodder, sorry Soy. Hokin enters the scene as a single target damage per second and tank hero. He applies stun and defense reduction to enemies, plus physical damage immunity to himself. In theory, that's pretty solid. In practice, his stats are low and there are so many better single target damage per second heroes that Hokin ends up sitting in the background twiddling his thumbs. Now, meet Bane. Oh, Bane. He's probably one of the weakest magical damage per second heroes in the game, with fairly low damage and mediocre utility. His 3-man silence and passive revive immortality skills give him some use in 3 versus 3 player versus player modes, but outside of that, he's pretty much just fodder waiting for someone to give him a chance. On to Raccoon, a tank who's as basic as a plain slice of bread. He brings defensive buffs for himself and can apply taunt, which is okay if you literally have no other tanks. Otherwise, he's just kind of there, looking like a hero but acting like a placeholder. You won't be drafting him to headline your endgame squad anytime soon. Let's talk about Catty, our single target damage per second and debuffer who also acts as an area of effect buffer. She gives crit rate boost and weakness hit chance boost to allies, while dropping debuffs on a single enemy. She can work as a budget damage per second buffer for any team, but if you're aiming for competitive content, she's more like the second choice when your main picks are busy. Finally, Sylvia. She's a 3 target or all target magical damage per second hero, decent in 3 versus 3 player versus player battles thanks to her defense ignore on a high damage skill and her passive immortality/revive. But for any player versus environment content, she doesn't shine. Think of her as the hero who's the life of the party in player versus player, but kind of awkward at dungeon runs. The heroes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right: Platin, Spike, Colt, Ray, Karen, Yuri, Joker, Asura, Ariel, Nojo, Cleo, Syrah, Lania, Sarah, Jupi, Spinner, Jane, Chancellor, Helenia, Black Rose, May, Orly, Amelia, and Havinia. Platin is basically the king of player versus player support and tanking. He can reduce enemy health points to 25% right from the start, making executions a breeze. Sure, he has other useful effects, but honestly, that health points alteration is what makes him shine. Spike is a really solid damage per second hero who brings freeze crowd control to the table. When that freeze detonates, it deals % maximum health damage, which is super nice in PvP. He has some niche uses in player versus environment content too, but compared to meta damage per second heroes, he's missing that extra oomph and utility. Colt is an area of effect damage per second and crowd control hero with speed-based attack scaling and camouflage. She's a player versus player monster, especially with her passive buff that increases all allies' effect hit rate, making their crowd control stick more reliably. Simply put, she's one of the best legendary plus heroes you can bring to endgame PvP. Ray is an area of effects damage per second hero with poison, bleed, and pierce, making her a solid early game Ruby farmer. Her sustained AoE damage per second is decent, but she doesn't quite hold the crown in any particular mode, especially once you get a legendary like Teo. Karen is your go-to single target healer and support, capable of removing debuffs, reviving allies, and healing. At tier 6, her revive even targets 2 allies, which is neat. She's good in multiple player versus environment modes and even player versus player, but higher rarity supports can often outshine her. Yuri is a single target, magical damage per second powerhouse, perfect for boss fights like the Iron Devourer before Pascal comes along. Her defense ignoring damage and burn stacking make her extremely reliable, though she does need a few supporting allies to reach her full potential. Joker brings a unique twist to the table with a single target skill that hits 7 times, making him exceptional in the light dungeon. He can also remove buffs, reduce enemy critical rate, and buff ally critical damage. Niche? Yes. Useful? Definitely. Asura is a support and single target damage per second hero, mainly used to apply focus target on the Iron Devourer. She also applies defense reduction on enemies and barriers for allies. Her uses are limited, but when you need her, she's incredibly valuable. Ariel is a versatile support and damage per second hero, granting your team burn immunity and applying several debuffs with her 3-man area of effect attacks. She's decent for player versus environment, particularly as a replacement for Yui against burn-inflicting enemies, though she's not overpowered. Noho is a rare magical damage per second hero who brings health points, alteration, and buff removal. She's solid for tough player versus environment stages, especially where her health points alteration outdamages your other damage per son heroes. Still, Platin and other health points alteration heroes often edge her out. Cleo is a strong 3-man damage per second support and debuffer hero. She provides silence immunity for allies, deals % health damage through poison stacks, and applies petrify and physical attack power reduction, making her especially handy in 3 versus 3 player versus player. Sierra is a 3-target area of effect damage per second hero with good damage and buff duration reduction. She can serve as a budget magical damage per second for Castle Rush until you grab stronger heroes like Ruri. Lania is a damage per second support hero who grants freeze immunity to allies and applies freeze herself. She's decent for both player versus environment and player versus player, though other AoE damage per second heroes with more raw damage often outperform her. Sarah is a support and damage per second hero who applies a variety of buffs to allies while providing sleep immunity. She's particularly strong against Yonhee in raids and can hold her own in player versus player, but outside of that, her utility is limited. Jupi is an exceptional rare single target physical damage per second hero. She stacks multiple self buffs and applies poison with basic attacks, making her an excellent replacement for Shane in the Destroyer Gaze raid. Sniper is arguably one of the best rare single target damage per second heroes, especially for the Ox King raid until you acquire Espada. Outside of that, he's less versatile, so don't expect him to shine in every game mode. Jane is a single target damage per second hero who stacks poison to deal % health damage. She's pretty solid for the water dungeon and doesn't need heavy investment, though stronger single target damage per second heroes exist. Chancellor is a support and debuffer hero, capable of applying damage and attack reduction, defense reduction, buff removal, and increased mischance. In player versus player, his debuffs can completely cripple enemy damage per second heroes. In player versus environment, other supports often outperform him. Helenia is a tank designed to counter magic damage heavy teams. With taunt, magic damage immunity, and the ability to clear debuffs and heal low health allies. She's extremely strong in the right scenarios, though less flexible outside magic damage focused stages. Black Rose is an AoE damage per second support hero who provides Petrifia immunity, attack boost for allies, and removes buffs from enemies. She's better at tier 6, but other heroes often outperform her in most modes. Mei is a damage per second support hero who applies various damage over time effects and debuffs with 1 or 3 target skills. Her damage is on the lower side, especially without effect hit rate buffs, making her useful only in select stages. Orly is a support and buffer for magic type teams. She can remove buffs on enemies, reduce defense, cleanse debuffs on allies, and provide buffs and barriers. Her utility is decent, but generally outclassed by other supports. Amelia is a support and crowd control hero, arguably one of the best in Guild Wars due to her 3-man concussion, one of the strongest crowd controls in the game. She can also apply barriers, clear debuffs, and inflict unable to recover, though these aren't as crucial. Havenia is a single target and AoE damage per second hero who applies freeze with both basic attacks and her 3-target skill. Her damage and crowd control aren't top tier, but are serviceable, making her worth using in modes with just 3 enemies. The heroes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right: Rosie, Faye, Yushin, Rory, Alice, Taka, Eileen, Jave, Espada, Nia, Nox, Ace, Miho, Chris, Sieg, Rin, Sylvester, Kagura, Valika, Daisy, Karma, Bidam, Aquila, Rook, Kiriele, Chloe, Leo, Lucy, Lee, Jin, Fenginyan, Karon, and Victoria. Rosie is a support and debuffer hero who can revive allies and apply the death debuff to enemies, dealing % health damage and executing them if it reaches 2 stacks. She's extremely useful in any team-based mode, especially player versus player, and her tankiness plus damage immunity when at low health makes her a nightmare to deal with. Fi is an overpowered support and damage per second hero for burn stacking teams. She stacks burn on all enemies with high chance, deals insane damage, executes low health targets, removes buffs, applies debuffs, and can revive once per battle. Her power truly shines in player versus player, especially with Transcendence 6 for AoE executes. Yushin is an AoE damage per second and debuffer who reduces enemy effect resist, applies paralysis and healing reduction, and boosts allies' effect hit rate for easier debuff stacking. He's insanely versatile, especially in magic type teams, and shines in player versus player where crowd control is king. Rory is a 3-man AoE magical damage per cylinder hero, excelling in Castle Rush, Advent Expedition, and Guild Wars. With self-magical damage boosts and reliable AoE damage, she's top tier for magic type teams, though her 3-target limitation makes her less versatile in other modes. Alice is a meta healer and buffer who provides team-wide heals, heal over time, and massive defense boosts. She's excellent for both player versus player and player versus environment, especially in modes that require defensive buffs, and doesn't need heavy investment to be effective. Taka is a 3-man AoE physical damage per saint hero who excels at punishing low health targets. He's a powerhouse in Castle Rush and Advent Expedition, and while usable in player versus player, a few heroes may outperform him in those modes. Eileen is a support and damage per second hero who boosts ally physical damage and can inflict shock with her abilities. She works well even without Transcendence buffs, making her a reliable alternative to Delons in certain player versus player setups. Jave is one of the best burn stackers in the game, applying burn through AoE, basic attacks, and counterattacks. His chance to stun makes him valuable in player versus player and some PvE modes, though you'll need Transcendence 6 to upgrade burn into Dragonflame. Espada is a single target magical damage per second hero, the primary damage dealer for the Ox King raid. His insane single target damage makes him essential for endgame content, though his specialization limits him to specific modes. Nia is an AoE magical damage per second hero who applies shock to all enemies and prolongs their skill cooldowns. She's a strong debuffer and damage dealer, especially when paired with multi-hit AoE allies to fully utilize shock stacks. Nox is a tank and support hero who stacks the death debuff and amplifies allies' death proc chances. He also taunts enemies, reduces effect resist, and gains all damage immunity with his skills, making him fantastic for multiple modes, especially 3 versus 3 player versus player. Ace is a versatile support for physical DPS teams, reducing enemy defense and healing while increasing physical damage taken. He deals decent full AoE damage and cleanses debuffs on allies at tier 2, making him useful in several situations. Miho is a 3-man magical damage per second, debuffer, and support, providing life drain, debuff removal, and weakness boost for allies while applying magic vulnerability and buff duration reduction to enemies. She's very strong in Castle Rush and Advent Expedition. Chris is a support and damage per second hero who applies the death debuff and works exceptionally well with Rosie in team-based modes. His only downside is that his death proc chance is relatively low. Sieg is a support and single target DPS for physical type teams, granting back row allies physical attack boost and all allies stun immunity. He's mostly used for stun immunity against specific enemies, as neither his buffs nor damage per second are exceptional. Rin is a self-buffing magic DPS who reliably applies confusion, making her overpowered for player versus player and PvE modes where confusion is valuable. She also reduces enemy buff durations and deals decent area of effect damage to 4 enemies. Sylvester is a solid AoE damage per second hero whose skill deals high magical attack damage to 3 enemies and reactivates on executions. She works very well in player versus player, especially with Platin, though outside of that she's situational. Kagura is an AoE damage per second and support hero, inflicting healing reduction and petrify on enemies while boosting allies' critical damage and physical damage. She shines in player versus player and infinite tower, though some supports outperform her in PvE. Villica is an AoE damage per second and support for magic type teams, providing magical damage boosts and cooldown reduction. She applies burn and magic vulnerability on enemies, deals extra damage on crits, and is great for Ruby farming thanks to her all enemy targeting. Daisy is a support for magical damage teams, granting magical attack boosts, petrify immunity, barriers, and percent health damage to single enemies. She's mainly effective in PvE, with other heroes often having better crowd control or utility. Karma is one of the best player versus player support and damage Pojan heroes, offering allies defensive and offensive buffs, plus healing. Her defensive utility in PvE is weaker, making her a lower priority in those modes. Bdam is a physical DPS hero who stacks bleed and has 3-man AoE skills. He lacks other buffs and is underwhelming compared to other physical DPS heroes, though he can shine in select stages with bleed or free target advantages. Aquila is a very strong tank who stacks death and reduces enemy death turn durations while applying effect resist reduction to all enemies. Paired with Nox, Chris, and Rosie, she forms a formidable player versus player and story progression team. Rook is a tank and support hero who performs decently in most modes requiring a tank. He's tanky and applies block rate boosts and barriers to allies, though Nox and Rudy tend to outperform him in versatility and effectiveness. Kyriel removes all enemy buffs while gaining damage boost stacks for each debuff removed, up to 4. With Guts and a secondary shield, she's extremely survivable and deals pierce damage with a 30% chance to inflict paralysis, making her a PvP powerhouse. Chloe is a top tier rare support who grants shock immunity, crit rate and attack boost for allies, and can remove buffs and apply unable to recover on enemies. She's a solid choice, especially in PvE content. Leo is a single target and free enemy AoE DP hero who grants death immunity, making him perfect for Sunday Castle Rush. He applies bleed and other debuffs, making him a generally strong rare hero. Lucy is a healer and support who reduces magic type cooldowns, removes debuffs, boosts defense, heals, and grants poison immunity. She's excellent in both PvE and PvP and is one of the best supports for the Hydra raid. Lee is one of the best rare tanks with taunt, counterattacks, physical damage immunity, and health points alteration. He excels in multiple PvE modes, especially Castle Rush and Tower, making him a fantastic investment. Jin is a 3-man AoE DPS hero with decent damage who also grants silence immunity to all allies. He's effective in several PvE modes, particularly Castle Rush, making him a reliable choice. Feng Yan is a rare 3-man AoE DPS who deals defense ignoring damage at tier 6, applies defense reduction, and grants team-wide freeze immunity. He's strong once upgraded, but requires investment to truly shine. Karen is a tank and healer with excellent AoE heals and bleed immunity for all allies. He's one of the best pure healers among rares and even provides a barrier to himself, making him both durable and effective. Victoria is a single target DPS and support hero who grants paralysis, immunity, and magical attack boosts to allies while dealing high single target damage. She's great for any magic type squad and highly reliable. The heroes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Juri, Vanessa, Tio, Yonhee, Lina, Rudy, Kyle, Delons, Rachel, Biscuit, Shane, Pascal, Klahan, Mercure, Yui, and Evan. Juri is an AoE damage per second hero who applies debuffs and triggers follow-up attacks that deal % maximum health damage. She can also prevent enemies from benefiting from revived or immortality effects, making her one of the best heroes for player versus player and a solid choice for PvE farming and team-based modes. Vanessa is an incredibly strong DPS and support, shining on full magic type teams in both PvP and PvE. Her AoE damage is impressive. She applies debuffs like Petrify, and she doesn't require heavy investment to perform well, making her super accessible for players. Tio is arguably broken in Seven Knights ReBIRTH. He's an AoE DPS monster for PvP and any team-based PvE mode. At Transcendent 6, he gains 100% crit chance on his skills, refreshes cooldowns with Revive plus Immortality procs, pierces damage immunity, and reduces enemy buff durations. If you get him, consider your team officially OP. Yonhee is a versatile AoE damage per second, crowd control, and support hero. She deals defense ignoring and % health damage, applies sleep with skills and basic attacks, and boosts all allies' magical damage. She's a staple for magic type teams and excels in pretty much any mode thanks to her mix of % max HP and flat damage. Lina is a legendary support powerhouse, offering heals, offensive and defensive buffs and debuffs to enemies. She's universally strong and massively benefits any team she's on. Among all legendary supports, she should absolutely be your first priority for upgrades. Rudy is the meta tank in Seven Knights ReBIRTH. He spreads damage received across all allies, applies crowd control immunity team-wide, and offers other defensive buffs, making your entire team insanely beefy. He's a must-have for both PvP and PvE. Kyle is an AoE damage per second juggernaut, targeting enemy DPS, dealing defense ignoring % health damage, and removing buffs. He's an absolute monster in any mode with multiple enemies, and one of the strongest AoE DPS heroes in the game. Delons is a versatile support and damage per second hero. He buffs ally physical damage, applies silence with basic attacks and AoE skills, and has a high damage single target ability that recasts on defeated enemies. He's strong across a wide variety of PvE and PvP modes. Rachel is a single target and AoE debuffer who applies physical vulnerability, all attack reduction, damage reduction, and buffs allies. She stacks burn reliably, making her valuable for burn teams, though her free enemy targeting limits her usefulness in some modes. Biscuit is a support hero who boosts your highest attack allies with boss damage and weakness hit rate, removes enemy buffs, and applies debuffs. She's a solid boss mode support, with her best trait unlocked at Transcendent 6. Shane is a single target physical DPS and the main damage dealer for the Destroyer Gazer raid. His damage scales with enemy debuffs, and his passive grants insane critical rate boosts. He's a strong single target nuker for many modes, alongside Pascal and Espada. Pascal is a single target magical DPS with insane crit rate, crit damage, and a defense nuking skill. He's the main damage dealer for the Iron Devourer raid and is extremely useful in many other modes, making him a top tier single target DPS alongside Shane and Espada. Klahan is an AoE physical DPS with arguably the best ruby farming potential in the game. He has two AoE skills, one dealing double damage to enemies above 50% HP and another for those below 50% HP. His AoE damage is just broken, making him a farm-friendly powerhouse. Mercure is a dedicated DPS and support for full magic type teams. He applies % health damage, reduces enemy healing and effect resistance, applies stun, deals decent AoE damage, and provides barrier to allies. He's meta for full magic PvP teams and decent in PvE. Yui is by far the best rare hero and the only one who can compete with legendary supports. She provides excellent sustain, 2 target revives, physical damage boost, burn immunity, and heals herself with her passive. She's just insanely strong. Evan is a tank and defensive buffer who provides various boosts to allies, including stun immunity. He's a solid frontline for both PvE and PvP and easily the best rare tank in Seven Knights ReBIRTH. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.